Answer those two questions. Okay, geo or arithmetic, and then is it a sequence or a series? Okay, a sequence is a future term, a series is a sum. Geometric, you're multiplying to get to the next term. Arithmetic, you're adding to get to the next term. Putting an emphasis on the word multiplying. There is no division in sequences or series. It's a ratio. A ratio is something you multiply by. It's not a division question. So stop dividing. That's what you're getting wrong on quizzes and tests. You cannot divide. You multiply by either a number that is greater than 1 or a number that's less than 1. And that would be a fraction or a decimal, but there's no division. So to determine if it's arithmetic or geometric, you're going to take two consecutive terms and subtract them. And then you'll take another two consecutive terms. It could be any two. And you're going to subtract them. If you get the same number, then it's arithmetic. If you get different numbers, you can assume it's geometric. So what's 3.8 minus 5? No.
Negative 1.
Negative 1.
There you go. What's 1.4 minus 2.6? Okay, so if it's the same, that means it's a common difference. And if it's a common difference, it's arithmetic. Okay. Now it says, find the 1056th term in the sequence. So if it's asking for a future term, what does that make it? A sequence or a series? Sequence. So arithmetic sequence. So you write down your formula for an arithmetic sequence. And then you can try to plug in what you know. And if you don't know something, you might have to find it. So we need the first term here. Our first term is 5. And we need the common difference, which you should have found. Now, if we're doing geometric and it wasn't arithmetic, then you wouldn't have found it yet. You would have to find it at this point. But since we already found it, you can put that here. Since it's negative, I'm going to erase this and put a minus sign. So we have negative 1.2.
Do we get a calculator on the switch?
And then we are finding the 1056th term in the sequence, so we're putting that number in for n. So n is representing the term number. Not the term itself, but the term number. Wherever you put n, you want to also put it here for the subscript. Okay, so you're finding a sub 1056, that's the 1056th term. And you put it in for n, and you simplify this side of the equation, which you can do on a calculator. And we get negative 1,261. The only thing you want to just make sure is that that number is a rational number for your question. So is it rational for the number to be negative?
Yeah.
Why? Because it's decreasing because we're subtracting. Would it have been rational if we didn't get a negative?
No.
No, because I started with 5 and I started subtracting 1.2. If I do that 1,000 times, it's obviously going to dip me into the negatives. Now I got an integer, but would it have been okay if I got a decimal?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, because why?
X 10 to the.
Because you're subtracting still
Because I'm subtracting a decimal. So it's if maybe the 1055th term would have been a decimal, that would have been fine. But if all my numbers up here are integers and I'm subtracting an integer, then you shouldn't get a decimal. You should never get a decimal for n, because n is representing a term number. That n should always be positive and greater than 0, unless it's in sigma notation and it tells you that it's 0. Okay, but in the context of a question, you always want to make sure that n is positive and that it's an integer. Okay? All right, so that's our answer. Circle it. Move on. Next question. Every year, Ella gets a 3% raise on her salary. This year, she made $50,000. So this year, term number 1 is $50,000. How much money will she make on the 5th year if this trend continues? So what would be right after 50,000? How could we find that next amount? Yeah.
We could either multiply like 0.3 by 50,000 maybe.
No,
Pacific.
point 101.
1.03, and you need the 1, otherwise it's just gonna make it smaller.
Right.
So since it's a raise and not like a decrease or something, we're gonna do 1 plus 0.03. Now, what if it was like a decrease? I mean, I couldn't imagine that being on a salary, but if it says that it's declining by 3%, you would do 1 minus 0.03. I don't know what situation that would be. Maybe like, because we did questions about, remember when we did questions about the car and it was like decreasing in value, something like that. So if it's decreasing, you do 1 minus. So we're gonna just multiply this, right, by 1.03. Oh my gosh, man. $51,500. Now, just because there's a percentage in the question doesn't necessarily mean that it's geometric. But in this case, since we need to multiply by 1.03 to get to the next term, that does make it geometric because we have a ratio. So it's geometric and our ratio is 1.03.
It's a sequence.
Yeah, so is it a sequence or is it a series? Are we adding things or are we just finding something in the future?
We're trying to find
Something in the future.
So it's a sequence.
Right, so we want 5th year, we know year 1, we also know year 2. We're looking for year 5, which is gonna be the 5th term. So we want a geometric sequence. Okay, and I wanna see the formula, or it's not gonna get points. So we're gonna take our first term and plug that in, that's 50,000. Also, it's helpful for both you and me if when you have a number that has lots of digits, you put commas in there so you don't lose track of your digits and so that I can grade it easily. So if it's like a really big number that has lots of numbers, put some commas in there, it'll make it easier. We're gonna put our ratio in here, 1.03. And then since we're looking for a sub 5, we're gonna put an exponent of 5 minus 1, or 4, because we want to do our ratio 4 times to get to the 5th term. And 1, 2, 3, 4. So as a number, I get 56275.4405. But since this is a word problem, we're going to restructure the answer so that it makes sense. So we can say that Ella will make $56,275.44 on year 5. So we're rounding to 2 decimal places because it's money. Now, if you type this in on your calculator and you don't get as many decimal places as I do, or if you, in general, when you type it in, not getting a lot of decimal places, then you might need to change your settings. You want to make sure that it's on float and not float 6 or something of the like, because then it's going to chop it off, and we don't want to do that. A radio station is giving away $350 on the first day of April. Okay, so it's April 1st, and they gave away $350. They're going to increase this amount each day by 50. So April 2nd, how much money was given away?
$400.
Okay, April 3rd?
$450.
Okay. And we want to know
And so on.
when they will give away $1,800.
So we're trying to find the. We're trying to find N.
We're trying to find N. So we have the term, but we don't know which term it is. So we're finding N. And is this arithmetic or geometric?
Arithmetic.
Because?
It's going up by
adding
5. 50.
And it's still sequence.
So they're increasing each day by $50. You also want to pay attention to the words like days, months, weeks, all of that. Pay attention to that. So increasing by each day. So we will use arithmetic sequence. I know the first term's 350. I know the difference is positive 50 because it's going up. I don't know N, and I need to put 1,800 here because that's what I'm trying to figure out what N do I plug in to get 1,800. That's what I'm trying to figure out. And then you're gonna solve using a method of your choice. So for me, I think it's easier to distribute for this one. because it makes like less 50s. Because then I can, so after I distribute, I can combine 350 and -3 and -50 and get 300. So all I did was combine these two, combining like terms on the same side. Then I can subtract 300. And that gives me 1,600.
No, 15.
Thank you, 1,500.
Wow, you're so smart.
And
So it's ridiculous.
then I can divide by 50.
So it's the 30th term.
So when you divide by 50, me, you get, so 3 and then the extra 0. So that means on what day?
On the 30th day of April.
There you go. So April 30th. Now, if you got a really big number, you don't necessarily have to put the date, but I might give you a bonus point if you put the date. So if you got like the 200th for N and you want to figure out what date that is and you have time, I might give you a bonus point.
I will.
Do that at the end.
You're gonna. So what now?
Well, I can't tell you that or it wouldn't be a bonus.
So you're gonna give us. Wait, and that I don't. All you have to do is just put the date in the thing, right?
I mean, you could just say like 30 days after April 1st. But
I wish it was April 30th. Then I could
or it's not really 30 days after April 1st, actually. It's
Christmas,
29 days after
I have
April
4
1st.
months.
I know, I'm just saying, like,
So is it actually April
I
31st?
still have a while.
No, it's April 30th because
I
April
understand
1st was
for the
Ace
walk
of
with
1.
you,
So
but, like,
if this is
I still
30,
can't
that's
drive.
April 30th.
Yeah.
It would be harder if it was like 40. Then you would have to know how many days were in
Yeah,
April. And,
that'd
you know
be
what I
weird,
mean?
yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. That's why that would be.
Yeah.
Okay, number 4. When the diminuendo charm is used, it makes items 1/6 their normal size. A Death Eater uses the charm on a building that's 1,004 feet tall. That's the tallest building in London. London! What will height be to the nearest hundredth if he uses the charm 5 times on the building? So, how big is the building today?
1,400. 1,004, let's say.
And if we use the diminuendo charm, how big will it be?
1/6 its original size.
So how do we find something that's 1/6 its original size?
Calculus.
You
Times
multiply by
1/6.
6.
Yeah.
Geometric.
Which makes it geometric.
Let's go, boys.
Let's go, boys.
Now what if it says it's 1/6 of an inch less?
Then
that's
it's subtraction.
Then it's subtraction and it's annoying because this is in feet and that's an inch. And you'd have to subtract 1/6 of an inch.
Oh.
If you make me do that, I'll get up and leave.
I might not make you do that, but I just want to make you aware of the fact that just because I use a fraction doesn't mean it's geometric. It just means it is in this case. I don't know what that is, so I'm going to whip out my handy dandy calculator and ask him what it is. So I got, I'm going to write it as a fraction just so that,
Ew, gross.
704, right?
which is, so you know, approximately 167 1/3.
Thanks.
Now, what do we want to know? What is the height going to be if he uses the charm 5 times?
The Trump.
Charm.
I wish I could just multiply it like the
Yeah, we're looking for the last term.
Wait, but.
See, but I'm going to make these numbers bigger and you won't be able to do that.
Why
Oh,
would
is
I
it
do
5 over
Bet.
4 over 3?
That's the next one, yeah.
Oh, okay.
that?
Alright, so we are looking for a term in the future. We already said it was geometric, so we're using this. Whoops. We know the first term is 1,004. The ratio is 1/6. And we're looking for term 5, so that's 5 minus 1 times. And that's going to be...
Do I really have to write a sentence for all of these answers? It's so long.
It's a word problem, then I assume so.
You have to answer the
Yeah.
question.
Disgusting.
So I get as a fraction this, which isn't very descript, so I round it as a decimal, and I get this.
What does this script mean?
Doesn't describe the number very well.
Like, it's not.
It does say to round to the nearest hundredth, so we can say the building would be 77 1/100ths of a foot after 5 charms.
Can I just
and
say zero?
diminuendo
Okay.
charm.
What is charms?
Like a
Like Lucky
spell,
Charm.
It's a spell in Harry Potter.
specific type of.
Was that an actual
Or it's in
spell,
cereal
though?
sometimes.
I have never watched them, so.
That's all
It's
I
on
know.
like the
Under
Pottermore. It's on
cultures,
like. So when you're evaluating a series and it's in Sigma notation, you still have to go through this kind of
So
process.
it's
over here.
It's gonna be arithmetic.
I don't care. I
Arithmetic.
do it to make you mad.
Do it to sound dumb. Dumb. And now.
Okay.
How do you know it's arithmetic?
Because of the
Says plus.
1.4
Because it's not
plus.
arithmetic.
It says plus.
There's no
Right.
fraction.
Wait, does
There's
Google?
no
I guess
Like,
it's
yeah,
not parentheses.
So usually like a plus sign I'd say does kind of indicate it, but what if it was minus?
I thought it was a
That-
variable.
No, it's still.
Still
it's just
Yeah,
like
it's
an
I thought it was
to be
because
an
of the
exponent.
1.4 n plus.
Yeah, so it has to do with where n is located. So if
It's-
n is
n's
like
on the
being
outside, but-
multiplied and it's like all one level, it's being multiplied by the numbers and then maybe
190.
subtracting, adding, that makes it arithmetic because you're doing like it's linear. Like if you were to graph this, it would be linear. Over here, when n is an exponent, that's not linear. If you were to graph that, it would make it like exponential decay, and so that's a geometric type of function. This, if you graph it, makes a line. That makes it arithmetic. The sum symbol means that it's a series. Okay,
How do I
so
know when I'm
we
looking
need-
for the sum?
That symbol means sum.
Oh,
Like literally means sum.
Good job, Emma.
thanks guys.
Yes.
So we need sum, arithmetic sum. And then we're just gonna go through and see what we know. Right now, we know literally nothing. So we
Okay.
need to start finding things. So the first thing you're gonna find is the first term in our series. And that can be found by looking at the number on the bottom of the sigma and plugging it into the formula. Okay,
It's gonna
so
be
we
like
would do this like as a side note.
12.8.
Yep.
Okay. So once you find it, you can plug it in. We also need the last term because it's arithmetic. In a geometric, you don't need the last term, but in this one we do. That's why you always write the formula first. Because if you start doing math and you don't need to do the math, that's a waste of time, you're not gonna finish. So plug this in. We're finding the 998th term.
Always gotta do that. Let's do.
Thank you.
And calculate that again.
I
And it's
got
gonna be
1407.2.
yeah.
1407.2.
1.2.
8. Oh.
Okay, so first term, last term. Do we know n?
Yes we do.
What is it?
It's 998 minus 2.
Plus 1.
Yes.
So our n,
9897.
you're gonna take this number and subtract them. And then you're gonna add 1. The reason you add 1 is because you wanna make sure that you're including this term. If you find the difference, you're finding all the terms in between, you're not including the first term, and we want n to represent the number of terms.
997.
There you go.
Thank you, Tristan.
You also wanna put that 997 here.
I didn't really know if I was supposed to do that. I ran out of room. I'm not putting it. I'm not sorry about it. Hold
I mean, on the test.
on. On the test.
Wait, but isn't it -1 + 1 just 998?
Minus
Brayden.
2.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
minus 2 plus 1.
I don't know why I did that though. I
I
was
don't
dumb.
either.
Why did I do that?
I don't know.
Alright, we're all just.
Dumb,
We,
dumb,
all,
dumb.
we understood it. I think it's fine.
Yes, but I wrote down the number wrong.
Okay, so now
yeah.
it makes more sense.
We're-
Brayden,
Yeah.
you're so smart, Brayden.
I feel like this is so
He's paying
Actually,
attention,
Gryffindor.
guys. It's
I
good.
would take this without even like.
Alright, so then you just plug it all in, and the calculator's gonna give you the answer. Yay. Alright, so 700, 7,800.
Another idea. I don't have to write a sentence.
Yay.
Thanks. I hate sentences.
Okay.
I hate paragraphs, but
Number 6 is a
Infinity.
infinite geometric series. There's only one type of geometric series, or I'm sorry, there's only one type of series that's infinite, and it's a geometric. So there's only one formula you can use.
A1 over 1 minus r.
This is literally the easiest question in the world.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay?
She messed
This
it
is
up.
easy points. You need to
I
make
messed it
sure
up
that you
before.
know that whenever you see this guy up here, you use this formula. It makes it so much easier because you just know instantly what formula to use. We're gonna go through like one of the steps that we went through before. We're gonna take whatever this guy is and plug him in. So a sub 2 is 6 times 9/10 to the 2 minus 1, which is 6 times 9/10, which
Yo,
is
that's kinda
54 over
cool.
10. But I didn't feel like simplifying.
27 over 5.
So. Nice.
Doesn't matter, you're gonna
Of
plug it in
course.
your calculator anyway. So 27 fifths. is a sub 1, but in this case it's technically a sub 2. But same idea. Then we're going to identify the ratio by simply looking at the number in the parentheses.
9/10.
Make sure that number is less than 1 and greater than, less than 1, greater than 0. So in between 1 and 0.
Wait,
If it's not, if it was 10/9, you would say it diverges, okay?
Can I just write that?
If it was written like this,
Oh.
okay, this number is 1 1/9, okay? That's gonna make the numbers in our series larger. You would say that this is divergent or diverges. Okay, you can't answer the question. It's like saying no solution, but if you're not solving for it, so you just say that the series
I hope we have like 5 of
diverges.
those. That's all we have to do in the test.
So
So
the
why do you
series
keep
diverges
changing-
or it's divergent. What?
Why do I keep changeful for that question?
Yeah, so 1
It's
minus 9/10 is 1/10, and then you multiply by 10 and you get,
270 over 5. But
Yeah.
I don't want to simplify.
It's
There we go.
54.
oh yeah, that goes in.
Don't forget the 54.
So you have to write on the test this series diverges.
If it diverges.
Well,
Right.
this one doesn't diverge.
Yeah, this one doesn't
Right.
diverge.
So it does.
Two roads diverge in a, what is it?
Ew, big numbers. Okay, that one number 1 on our quiz was rude. Just thought you should.
Really?
Oh,
No,
yeah, I knew it was coming.
That one took a.
I didn't
Alright,
like it.
we are going to find the sum of the series. I
I
gave
didn't
it
have time to
away.
finish
I
it,
put
but-
plus signs in there and I call it a series. So you know it's a series, you just have to determine what kind of series.
Yeah.
So,
Divide.
I could tell by looking at it, but if you can't, remember, you're gonna take two numbers
It's geometric.
and
but
subtract,
How did you get 270?
If they're arithmetic or
Because-
arithmetic.
and then
27
another
over
two.
5 times 10 over 1 because it's
Geometric.
keep changeful.
I know. Okay, you would take two numbers and subtract and see what the difference is.
1/5.
And then you take another two numbers that are consecutive and subtract. And if they're not equal,
They're not.
then that means it's not a common difference. That means it's a ratio. So then you would want to figure out your ratio by taking the ratio of two consecutive numbers.
If
So
I
you
can look
would
at it and
do-
know it in 0.5 seconds, I don't have to do that.
No,
right?
you don't have to do that.
Good, 'cause I
But
won't do it.
I'm telling you this. Why would I be telling you this?
Just in case there's a problem or it's not involved.
It's not going to be obvious. So that's why I'm telling you this.
Also rude of you.
So you get 1/5, or 0.2 in this case. So if you want to use 0.2, you can. It doesn't matter. Okay. Yeah, if it's not obvious, that's why I'm telling you this. Because for some people it might be really obvious, and for others it might not. And if I use a ton of fractions or a ton of decimals, it's not going to be obvious. You do have a calculator, so you don't necessarily have to divide this in your head, but you need to know the concept. So just make sure when you're dividing to find the ratio, you're finding the ratio of a term by its previous term. Don't do 500,000 over 100,000. That's going to give you 5, and we're not multiplying by 5 to get to the next term.
No.
After you find your ratio, confirm that your ratio is correct by taking your first term and multiplying by it and seeing, is it equal to my second term? Yes?
Yes.
Good. Confirm it, please. It's like checking your work. You don't want to keep going if your ratio is wrong, because then F minus, right? Like the whole thing is wrong. We haven't even begun,
Can you
so
get
you don't
F
want to do that.
minus?
No, I'm kidding.
Yes, you can.
No,
So
I'm
we
saying-
know
Do you get that a lot, Chris?
that this is a geometric series, because I already told you it was a series and we found a ratio, which makes it geometric. So we're going to start plugging in the things that we can. We can plug in 500,000 for the first term. And we know the ratio.
This is geometric, right?
Indeed.
Indubitably.
And so because we know those things,
Gosh darn it, we don't know our.
we're almost done, but yes, gosh darn it, we don't know our n. So, I'm gonna find n right down here, okay? We don't know n, we know the last term, but unfortunately that doesn't tell us what term that is. And there's a very large gap between these two, so I can't even just kind of guess. So what I'm gonna do is use the old geometric sequence formula to find it. So we would put 32 over 5 here, 500,000 here,
1/5 or 0.2.
1/5 here, or 0.2 here. I'm going to use 1/5, it's easier.
Yeah.
Then you're going to take 32 over
I used the wrong
5.
one. I'm so dumb. I used arithmetic because that was the one I knew, and I didn't want to think of the other one.
So you're gonna take 32 over 5. You're gonna divide by a sub 1.
I really think I broke my back.
Your back?
My back just like.
That's not
You
good.
broke your back.
You broke your back.
We'll be
You
able
need
to-
a brace.
I mean, like,
That's
not
not true.
literally.
Not all
I
the
just mean, like,
time.
my
Injury.
back hurts.
I think I broke my back.
You can break your back and walk to your
Focus.
Quote of the day.
Okay, so I get that when I divide. The next thing you're gonna do is see. We need this to be 1/5 to the something. So what we're trying to do is rewrite this so that it says 1/5 to something equals 1/5 to the n minus 1. Now, you might not know what that is, and that's okay. Just start trying things. You have a calculator. I gave you a calculator.
Thanks.
Our biggest 5 we know is probably this one, and it's like 125. It's a lot bigger
Oh, I
than that.
love
So
these.
why don't we just pick a number that's bigger than 3?
7.
9.
7. Oh,
Yeah.
that's the right one.
Whoa.
Like,
Ooh, dang, Tristan, you're on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if it's too big, go smaller, and if it's too small, go bigger.
Wait,
Uh,
is it 5 to like the
Yo.
-7 because it's a fraction?
Well, so I'm getting there. So 5 to the 7th is this. So that means 1/5 to the 7th is
It's tough.
1 over 78,125.
Oh.
Okay, now once we get 1/5 to the stuff, 1/5 to the stuff, you take stuff and stuff, you set them equal to each other, and that tells you that n is 8.
Ah.
Yay! Then we put an 8 here, we put an 8 here, we use our fancy calculator to get the
You're
answer.
going so fast. How?
I already found n. I'm done.
Wow, you're so
It is 6.
Got something.
204.
Brain, you're so smart.
900.
You know how many times I did that on a quiz yesterday or 2 days?
Dude,
I just like found something. I'm like, okay.
Wow. What?
I'm just happy I found something.
624,992.
Brayden struggled so much yesterday. I'm like, oh.
3,124,992 over 5.
Excuse me, you did not write SN. Offended.
I did, I put it
Saturday.
there.
I mean, yeah, but no, not for the answer.
I'm not done, dude.
Dude.
So do you want it either in fraction form or just the equal number?
Well, I just wanted to give you both in case
Right,
you
right,
used
right.
point 2. If it's not terminating, I don't want a decimal.
Okay.
Okay, and if you're not sure, if it's terminating, put it as a fraction.
Terminating means if it's like repeating.
Terminate,
Yes.
the terminator.
If it terminates, it doesn't mean it means it doesn't.
Terminate means
It doesn't
if it
repeat.
stops. So if it doesn't stop, put it as a fraction. If it does stop, I don't care.
I'm just gonna write the fraction version.
Or I can just do the fraction and do a line over the last number.
Well, that's only if it's repeating. That doesn't. It doesn't necessarily have to be repeating to not terminate.
Oh, true.
Like pi doesn't terminate, but it's not repeating.
Yeah, that's true.
I
Because
used
it's
to know
like
so
it's
much
weird.
of pi.
Okay, another sum. Is it fair to assume that this is an arithmetic sum?
Or is it safe to
No.
say?
No.
Is it
It
safe?
never-
But maybe.
Is it safe to
It
say
is.
that this is an arithmetic sum?
Or is it fair
So you
to
want
assume?
common difference?
Fair to assume.
You never want to assume, but it is because we can see the common difference here is
-4.
-4, and here
Thank
is
you,
also
Tristan.
-4. Now, we don't need the common difference for an arithmetic sum, really, in theory. Okay, we need the first term, the last term, and n. We have,
The first term, the last term, and we don't have n, which kind of sucks.
exactly, we have the first term, we have the last term,
But I think I'm fine with it.
we don't have n.
There we go.
Okay, so let's find n.
Plus
Let's
negative.
do this, boys.
To find n, you use the sequence formula.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that line was not straight.
Whatever!
He's getting very triggered from this.
Okay, so in order to find what n is, we can plug in -46 for a sub n, 30 for a, and -4 for d.
Oh yeah.
Then we math. So, you
I'm
can,
gonna subtract.
if you want, subtract 30. And again, you have a calculator,
-76.
so if you're not good at subtracting things, use the calculator. Then I can divide both sides by -4, or I could distribute the 4, whichever you prefer.
So n is 5.
Thank you.
Wait,
Wait, no.
1,
What?
3 is 19.
Oh, darn it. I said that.
Oh, sorry.
I said that Negative 46 minus 30 was negative 16.
Trust me.
Exactly.
I was gonna do that too, and I did it.
Negative and
Okay,
a
but
negative.
look, is 5, look at your series. Does 5 look rational?
Yeah.
No,
My
because
idiot
5
self
would
would be like,
imply
yeah, it's 5.
that
Yeah,
that's only 2 more minus 4s after
I
that.
would have just like done it like
Not
this.
possible.
That's why I got this wrong on the quiz, I'm pretty sure.
So
I failed that.
before you do anything, make sure you're checking that it's rational. All right, so this is 10 times negative 16. Which
So is it
negative
20?
60.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh god.
You can never forward it.
Paul has been getting a 2% raise on his salary every year for
Congrats, Paul.
7 years.
Good job, Paul.
So it's a raise. Raise means the numbers are getting bigger, okay?
Oh yeah.
If the total amount
It's printed.
made over the 7 years was this much money, so a lot. That's how much he made, stop talking. Total over the 7 years. So year 1 plus year 2 plus year 3 plus year 4 plus 5, 6, and 7 totals to this amount. How much did he make the first year?
Oh my
Sometimes.
god, but
We're
it's,
trying to
it's
find
a
our- we're
series.
trying to find our
So if
A1.
you don't
It's
know
like-
how to do word problems,
It's like
you're screwed.
So
Yeah.
think about what's happening. Do we know the first number in the thing?
No.
No.
Oh, we do know that.
Do we know the second term in the thing?
No.
No.
We know the 7.
But I
We
know
don't know
myself
anything.
7.
No, we don't even know the 7.
Yeah, we do.
No, we don't.
No, it says made over 7 years.
Oh.
We know
That's
Yeah, come
that
on, boys.
together.
the
Come on,
sum
boys.
of
Is it
these.
safe to say that this
You
question
mean A?
sucks?
No,
Is this?
A8.
Is it safe to say
Would it be AA is equal to that though?
that we know the total?
It says over.
Over the 7
It's
years.
the final
No.
spreadsheet.
So, oh, you know what you do? You do the opposite of a mean, right?
So that's
Divided by 7.
We have a total, that's S sub n. In this specific case, it's S sub 7. Now, if he's getting a 1.2% raise, what kind of series is this?
Geometric.
A geometric. Okay, so it's a geometric
I
series
just
we're
wrote a 2
using
instead of 7.
Dig up on me.
this.
nice.
No, not nice. Disgusting.
So you've identified that it's some kind of series. You've identified that it's geometric because of the 2% raise.
We know our rate.
Then we can, so identify what the heck it is first, and then you can try to start plugging stuff in. We know our ratio. What's our ratio?
1.02.
1.02.
Good, and again, if it's a decrease, it would be what?
Like 1 minus 0.
So what would that be?
I have no idea.
0.8.
0.98.
98. I'm literally dumb. I'm sorry.
So if it's like a decline of 2%, it would be 1 minus 0.02, but
Wait,
since
but I have a question.
he's getting a raise,
How did you determine it was a geometric?
the fact that
Because of you multiply.
he's getting a 2% raise, so we know
Percent.
that means we have to multiply by 1.02 to get to the next one.
Okay.
Dig up on me.
And that ends
it's
us
gonna be negative.
7.
So there's
Dig up
that.
on me.
Yes, so then the next thing we could find is the n if we want. So the n, we know because it says over the 7 years, the n is 7. So I can make this exponent 7. And I would make this a 7, but we actually know what that whole term is. So in addition to n is 7, stop, we also know that the sum of all the 7 years is this big number.
So we replace
So
that.
we replace the sum with the sum. So 2, 9, 7, 3, 7, 1,
Oh my god.
0.34.
It's not that serious.
And now we have to solve using our awesome algebra skills.
Mr. Rep?
Oh, I know. First thing we
Can we
do.
do it another way where we plug in with the sequence, to start a series equation instead?
How would I
This
know
is the
normal
series.
calculator?
Start a sequence equation, sorry.
No, you can't use this.
You can't use AN equals A1.
What would you use it for?
I use it to find the A1, sorry, the A1, yeah.
Guys, I know what we're gonna do. We're gonna
You can
subtract the
do
1 minus
AN
1.02 and then
Equals
multiply it up there
A1 times
the other way,
R,
and then multiply
N
it to the
minus
other
1.
side.
And you can
Oh,
plug,
I'm
you
so
can plug in
smart.
every
We
single.
don't know this.
I know you guys.
Isn't our AN the 200,000 or no?
But you're saying usage.
No.
Oh,
I didn't
so
say
never mind.
anything.
So we have nothing to put here. No, we know the sum. This is the sum of the 7 years.
Oh, okay, that's what it is.
Alright, so it's up to you. If you want to simplify like the denominator or just straight up multiply by it, that's fine. I'm going to simplify it. So if we simplify the denominator, I get negative 0.02. You don't have to do that if you don't want to.
That's what I was
But
gonna do.
The next step is to multiply by the denominator. So we're gonna take the sum, the 297,371.34, we're gonna multiply it by negative 0.02. And I get this.
Very cool.
I'm gonna keep all my decimals.
Very cool.
Wait, so what if you multiply by negative 0.02?
Yes. But do you know the answer? Okay, then.
Okay, then I have this quantity here that I would want to get rid of because I'm solving for a sub n.
Just simplify it.
You could simplify it. I'm not
And
even
then
gonna do
divide.
that. I'm just gonna divide by it because it saves time.
So does that
And I
mean
have a
like use that?
calculator. So you're gonna divide both sides by this quantity.
Oh.
It's best if you don't simplify it. It's best if you just plug it all in because otherwise you're gonna wind up having to round and you don't want to round because every time you round, you get a slightly less accurate answer. So when I divide, I get a very large decimal, and we're gonna round because it's a monetary amount. So I get 40,000.0006,324. Okay, so we're gonna round that to 40,000. So that was how much he made in his.
Hey, we're trying
on
to
his
sentence
first
closure.
year. I know, but I'm saving time because I want to make sure we finish.
Paul made 40,000.
Can I just round it to 40,000 in my sentence?
Hmm?
Can I round it to 40,000 in my sentence?
That's what I did.
Okay, good.
I rounded to 50,000, but
We're back in the vaults with Harry Potter,
oh gosh.
where items double when they're touched. So here's what it's like, okay? If there's a rock in the vault and you touch it,
It doubles.
Is that why
But what happens if there's
Okay, wait.
What happens if you touch the
Pay
vault?
attention.
The vault is
If
not
you
double.
touch this one, it
Or does it?
doubles. So if there's one item, it's 1. Then after you touch it and it doubles, there's now
2.
3 items.
Wait, what? Oh. Well,
Yeah, but wouldn't there be 2?
One.
Yeah, there would
Five.
be 2. Dang it.
It'd be 4.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Right? Hey,
that's
what are
why
the
I put the
questions?
sequence down
Unless-
there. Yeah, I
unless
know, I
you-
really
yeah.
did.
You know what
I
we
think
could
I wanted
do?
it to create. Okay, that's why I did this. This means 2 items are added.
Come on,
and
this
10
isn't
items
asexual
touched.
reproduction.
So
But
we'll
it
just
is.
we'll word it
Put
that
a
way
baby
for this
there.
question. 2 items are added every time an item is touched, which means if you start with 1 item, then
Okay,
you're
like
gonna
3
add
items.
2. I was trying to make it arithmetic, and
And
then
then
you add
you-
2, etc. But it
Etc.
says that we start with 57 items.
Ooh.
Jesus.
How
So-
did you get 5?
You add 2 each time.
Well, I was
Just
saying,
what
like, if you add 2 items every time you touch it.
What happens to the first one?
So then the other dot wouldn't double too.
That's why I said, like, every
That's why
time an
we-
item is touched. So focus on this part. 2 items added every time an item is touched.
Oh, so you're saying like
28
there's an
times
item, the item
it
stays there, but
touched.
2 drop out of the
You
side
don't
of
have
it.
to worry about the 5 because that's not happening anyway.
Yeah,
There's
we're not-
57 items, and an item is touched 15 times. So item touched 15 times.
So then A15 is 57.
No.
So if you touch once, it's gonna be 2 more. That's what I wanted it to be.
Did you just spell touch as
And then if
touche?
you, yeah, I did. Touche. It's
Touche.
touche. And then if you touch again, it would be 61 and so on. So what I want is an arithmetic series that adds to get to the next term. That's what I,
I
was
literally
shooting
am just
for.
gonna add it 15 times. I'm not even sorry.
Well, so that's we're trying to see how many total items would there be if an item was touched 15 times. So we know that it started with 57.
Yes. So
Um,
it's a series.
This one's
Yes,
well,
yes,
but
it is.
no, because in this case, even though we're looking for
No, it's not.
total items, this is a total items. Like 57 is a total items. Then you add 2, and it's 59 is a total items. You add 2, it's a total items. Like
so
it's one of those relative
So
questions.
it's A1 plus D.
Yeah, so these are all representing totals. So we're really just looking for a sub 15. So even though it uses the word total, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a sum.
That was one of those.
A sub 15.
So this is our formula for arithmetic. Although I wanted it to be arithmetic, I think I didn't quite
I did it in.
do it
I
right.
really hope
Geometric
you don't
for
word a
some
question
reason.
like that on the test. I'm
It's very specific. 2 items are added every time something's touched.
I mean, yeah, I guess so.
It's specific.
I think if
I
that
made
picture
sure
threw
that
me
I
off.
was as
That's so
specific as
It was
possible.
the picture that threw me off.
Cause you're uncultured.
No.
It's fine. I can always clarify. Alright, so let's plug in what we know. We know that the first term is 57. And then because of my parenthesis wording, we want to add 2 items every time something's touched. And we want to do this 15 minus 1
Madison,
times.
have you watched all the Harry Potter?
We're looking for the 15.
All of them are uncultured. I don't like any of them.
Harry Potter's
Have you
boring.
read any of the movies?
No, I just watched all the movies like 13
So you're the
times
uncultured
each.
one now.
I don't read though. All of you
books are
don't
so
know.
much
You guys
better.
have
Yeah, it's
same
gonna.
grade.
The movies are really boring to watch.
Yeah, they are.
I typed in 27.
Especially the 5th one.
Yeah.
And I was like, why is that?
on.
Alright, so I got 85.
It's the worst.
So with
I hate you.
in my theory, when an item is touched, you get 85 items.
So Harry Potter.
So you can say there were 85 items in the vault. 85
No.
items in the